Okay, so J.D. Vance just went on stage at a Turning Point USA event in Georgia, and a student asked him point blank, should the DOJ open a formal investigation into whether powerful people were shielded in the Epstein files? And instead of answering the question, he starts talking about pizza and grape soda. Meanwhile, Trump's name shows up over 38,000 times in the files, and Vance calls the whole connection a hoax. So watch this clip. Watch how he threads the needle. And then I'll break down everything he's hoping you don't look up.
Thank you so much, Mr. Vice President, and coming to UGA and allowing us to express our freedom of speech. So thank you so much. The First Lady said Epstein was not acting alone and had to be held accountable. She said and called for a congressional hearing, but President Trump multiple times called the files a hoax. The acting attorney general said Epstein shouldn't be a part of anything at the DOJ. If there are compromised government officials in those files, how can the public trust that this administration will hold anyone accountable when its own Justice Department is actively blocking the investigation? Given that, can you clearly articulate your stance on whether federal entities should have a formal investigation? Thank you.
Yeah. So first of all, you said the Associate Attorney General or something. I haven't seen that quote, but here's my view on the Epstein matter. Number one, the guy was clearly a scumbag, okay? Number two, he clearly had extraordinary connections, both with intelligence services, both inside the United States and outside the United States, and also with a lot of very wealthy and powerful people, okay? Number three, I have been a firm advocate and will continue to be a firm advocate of where we have something, and you know, like, I'm probably more obsessed with this than most officials, okay? Probably more obsessed with this than most people even in this room, is when you see somebody who says something in an email that suggests, you know, there's one email I read, and it's been a little while ago, but it was talking about, you know, one person sent an email to Jeffrey Epstein saying, oh, there were some really nice, like, pizzas and grape sodas or something like that. And I remember it sounded like the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, but here it was in like an email from a guy. And my reaction to that was, we should absolutely investigate that person, okay? And, you know, you remind me, I'm going to follow up on that to see whether we've investigated that person, because we should. We absolutely should. When you see evidence of sexual assault, sexual misconduct, regardless of whether you're powerful or not, in fact, you should probably investigate it more if you're a powerful person, right? I don't want powerful people, you know, being involved in this disgusting behavior. But I have to defend the president on this, because when he said that it was a hoax, what he was talking about was this democratic idea that he's connected to Epstein. If you look at those emails, it's like, you know, they were in the same, you know, everybody in Palm Beach knew everybody, okay? Like, the president has said he knew Jeffrey Epstein and he was a scumbag. But what you see in those emails is that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald Trump, and Donald Trump hated Jeffrey Epstein. In fact, one of the emails is about Donald Trump narking on Jeffrey Epstein to the local sheriff, saying, this guy's a scumbag. You should go and pick him up. So when the president says this is a hoax, he's not saying it's a hoax that Epstein was the scumbag. He's not saying that it's a hoax that Epstein was connected to powerful people. He's saying this democratic idea that somehow he was Epstein's best friend, that is a hoax. And if you look at the emails, it's obvious that Jeffrey Epstein hated Donald J. Trump. And by the way, one of the best signs for whether you're a good person or not, for whether you're a decent human being, is if the worst people in the world hate your guts. The fact that Jeffrey Epstein hates Donald J. Trump is a pretty good thing for Donald J. Trump.
Yeah, well, and I will say, by the way, just so you know, the DOJ, just before we got on stage, I guess I saw the news, has unredacted fully the 6 million documents, made it available to your congressmen and women. So put pressure on them to go give you a report of what they find.
All right, so let's talk about what you just watched, because Vance did something really specific there. He got asked a direct question: should there be a formal investigation into whether the DOJ protected people in the Epstein files? And he turned it into a story about himself. He says he's probably more obsessed with this than most officials. He brings up some email he read a while back about pizzas and grape sodas, says it reminded him of the Pizzagate conspiracy theory. And then he says, we should absolutely investigate that person. Sounds great, right? Except here's the thing. He's the vice president of the United States. He's not some guy on Reddit. He has the ability to actually make that happen. And he hasn't. So let's look at what he's actually referencing here. So this is what's on screen right now. During the TPUSA event, Vance referenced an email in the Epstein files where someone wrote to Epstein about pizzas and grape sodas. He said it sounded like the Pizzagate conspiracy theory, and that whoever sent it should absolutely be investigated. But he didn't name the person. He didn't say whether any investigation was opened. And his own DOJ has said the Epstein files should no longer be part of anything moving forward. So he's calling for investigations that his own administration is actively shutting down. Now, the emails he's referencing, they actually exist. Epstein's urologist sent him multiple messages using the words pizza and grape soda in, let's say, unusual contexts. Right after discussing erectile dysfunction medication, the word pizza appears over 900 times in the released files. But here's what Vance doesn't do. He doesn't follow up. He doesn't name anyone. He just drops it like a teaser and moves on. And then he gets asked about Trump. Why did Trump call the Epstein files a hoax? And Vance says, oh, no. He wasn't calling the files a hoax. He was calling the Democratic idea that Trump and Epstein were best friends. That's the hoax. So let's actually look at that. So here's the history they don't want you to know. Trump and Epstein ran in the same circles for years. Palm Beach, New York, parties at Mar-a-Lago. In 2002, Trump called Epstein a terrific guy. Then, in 2004, they got into a bidding war over a Palm Beach mansion called the Maison de la Métis. Trump outbid Epstein for $41 million, and that's supposedly what ended the friendship. After that, Trump reportedly banned Epstein from Mar-a-Lago and later cooperated with local police. But flight logs confirm Trump flew on Epstein's private jet multiple times in the 90s, and his name appears over 38,000 times across the 3.5 million pages the DOJ released in January. So Vance's whole defense is they had a falling out and Trump cooperated with police. And yeah, parts of that check out. But the idea that they weren't close before 2004, people who saw them together called them each other's wingmen. That's not a casual acquaintance. That doesn't mean Trump is guilty of anything. But it means you can't just say hoax and expect 38,000 mentions to disappear. Especially when your own DOJ is the one deciding what stays redacted. And this is the bigger picture. The Epstein Files Transparency Act passed in November 2025 with overwhelming bipartisan support. The DOJ was supposed to release everything within 30 days. They blew past the deadline. They put out 3.5 million pages, but with massive redactions. Congress had to fight just to view unredacted copies in a secure reading room at the DOJ building. The House Oversight Committee voted on a bipartisan basis to subpoena Attorney General Pam Bondi. She showed up to a closed-door briefing and refused to commit to complying. Democrats walked out. Massey and Khanna, one Republican, one Democrat, are now talking contempt proceedings and even joining survivors in a lawsuit. So here's the line. The Vice President of the United States stood on a stage and said we should absolutely investigate. But his own DOJ is blocking the investigation. Trump's name is in the files 38,000 times, but the DOJ withheld pages mentioning him until they got caught. Bondi got subpoenaed and won't comply. And the only people getting tough questions are the ones who aren't in power anymore. That's not transparency. That's damage control with a microphone. That's it. If this helped you see what's actually going on, hit the like, subscribe, share it with someone who needs the full picture. I'll see you in the next one.